Interesting stuff there out of Mickey Callaway, and these stats here brought to you by Geico. The back end of the Mets bullpen is currently constituted. 3 guys that, when healthy, have had a lot of success in their major league careers. Now, we're back on set with the Mets general manager, Sandy Alderson. I know one of the things you really liked about Mickey Callaway was how he thought the game a little more progressive. This is a progressive way to think about the bullpen. What are your thoughts on what he was saying there?
Well, first of all, I didn't hear a thing he said, okay? So,
but what are your thoughts? You need us to react?
Nothing in my ear. No, this is not how I intend to treat Mickey, during the season, but I didn't really hear anything. But I do think he has a more flexible view of the bullpen. And I think that in some conversations with either Dave Island or Mickey, they've talked about what flexibility they might bring to the bullpen usage. They've had great success in Cleveland. I mean, they've had very few relief pitchers in Cleveland that have had a bad year in the 5 years Mickey was there. So, and I think the success that they had with Andrew Miller and using some other people a little more creatively has given Mickey a lot of credibility in this regard, and hopefully our guys will be receptive to that kind of approach.
Yeah, the comments that you missed, that's exactly what he was talking about. He was saying not having a set closer, using matchups, coming with a lot of information. I would imagine that it's that analytical approach and willingness to be open-minded that connected the two of you in the interview process. Wondering how soon it was apparent that you didn't need to do a second round. You were ready to move on him because you seemed like you got a little more aggressive with that hire than you had originally planned to be in that process. Well, what point were you like, this is the guy, we got to make this happen, no need for another interview or anything?
Yeah, I think it was shortly after we completed the interview. I think his was the last of 6, and I think shortly after that, that's what we concluded. I think there were 2 other things that were in play there. One was that he's coming from a very solid, progressive, successful organization, and I think there's a lot to be said for having spent 5 years with an organization like Cleveland and having had success within the framework of that approach. And the second was we felt that there was going to be a lot of competition for Mickey, and we wanted to get it done. So we didn't spend a lot of time ruminating over our choice. We felt that wasn't instinctive or intuitive, but we felt that he was going to be very popular, and we wanted to get something done.
Do you think, Sandy, with the way he was talking about using the bullpen, that you can go a full season without a designated closer? I mean, Cleveland did have a designated closer for the most part until, and occasionally it was Miller, but it was mostly Cody Allen. I mean, what do you feel on that?
Yeah. Well, I think the most important thing that Mickey has in mind right now is not overburdening any one individual, using them too much. We can talk about talent evaluation, as you know, we can talk about experience, but ultimately usage has a big impact on success or failure. And we've got to use these assets a little more with a view toward 162 games than tonight or tomorrow. And I think that's what Mickey will bring, is a longer-term perspective on how we use these guys. So if that's the case, then we need to be able to mix and match on a nightly basis and not overuse any one of them.
Sandy, time's running short with you. So one question that it's along the same lines as rethinking this bullpen usage. You've also made a point of rethinking the training of these guys, the training staff, and have talked about hiring a director of high performance.
Right.
Can you just give a little insight as to what exactly the duties of that person will be and how you think that can really impact the team differently than what you've had in the past?
Yeah. Well, I look at that department as I would look at any sort of organizational structure, and I start with people, structure, and culture. So we have about half of our medical staff remains from last year. They're very solid, very capable. From a structural standpoint, what I felt was that we needed additional expertise in certain areas and additional capacity to handle everything that's going on. The other thing from a structural standpoint is that, the way you leverage people is through good systems. So we're talking scheduling, we're talking about programs, we're talking about all the things that go into creating routines that people can follow and that we can hold them accountable to. So I think it's people, it's structure, and then from a cultural standpoint, we need to provide better services to our players. That is true of every team. Every team now is not just providing services to their players, but in some sense competing with those outside the organization that are also providing services, whether it's a doctor in a second opinion, whether it's a physical therapist, whether it's a strength and conditioning coach in Dallas or Naples, Florida, or what have you. We need to make sure that we're as contemporary and cutting edge as there is out there. And one of the things I like about Mickey is that rather than dismissing some of these third parties that have new ideas, he's actually gone out and investigated them and tried to adopt what he views as good and caution players about what he views as bad, but out there and remaining contemporary in terms of the research, the technology, and other aspects of making sure that our players ultimately are on the field and performing as well as they can perform.